Right now is Texas Congressman and House Foreign Affairs Committee Chairman Michael McCaul. Mr. Chairman, thanks very much for spending the time this morning.
Thanks, Maria. Thanks for having me.
I want to get your assessment of this war right now. But first, let's deal with this intelligence failure, because you said that Egypt did, in fact, warn Israel of an upcoming attack. How is it possible that Egypt warns Israel, but the rest of the intelligence community is unaware?
Well, I think that's the big question. I think this is almost like Israel's 9/11, where you did have intelligence breakdowns, both on the part of the United States, I would say, and also on the part of Israel. And I can't go into some of this, but we don't know how high the warning went up the chain, if you will. And also remember, to put it into context, there are all sorts of threat streams always coming out of Gaza and the West Bank as it pertains to Hamas. Again, I think this is very similar to their 9/11 on the size, the scale, and an intelligence failure. And I don't normally agree with Kirby, but there will come a time for an examination of that.
Congressman, what can you tell us in terms of what the U.S.'s response should be? We're told 25 Americans have been killed. We've got 17 others missing. They could be potential hostages. Do you have any information on any of this?
Well, I do. We have about 25 hostages, up to almost close to 20 missing Americans now. Also about the same number killed over there. So as a result, we have a very strong force presence in the Mediterranean, both naval ships, destroyers, aircraft carriers. I'm pleased to see that. Because what we don't want to see, Maria, is an escalation. If we can contain this to Gaza and Hamas, but what we worry about in the national security field space is that Hezbollah, that has 100,000 rockets, could launch those and overload the Iron Dome. And also you've got Al-Qaeda, ISIS in Syria, Iraq. You got Iran-backed militias. All this is really a bad pot of bad actors that could come together in a big jihadist attack on Jerusalem. So we don't want this to escalate. And I think what we deployed there are special forces to train IDF. The next phase of this is going to go house to house. Right now you're seeing bombing of, command and control centers. It's going to be house to house after this. That's going to be the most dangerous part, the most bloodiest part, where they're going to rescue hostages, kill terrorists, and then also our FBI hostage rescue team are over there training and helping the Israelis out as well. I worry about the narrative. I listened to your prior piece. It didn't take very long for Hamas to go into action with these protests. I mean, everybody's sympathetic to Israel, and now Hamas is in action. You saw the protests in New York where they actually pulled out swastikas. I mean, my dad bombed the Nazis, and the idea that they're pulling swastikas out is very offensive.
Of course. And we're expecting activity tomorrow, particularly in New York, where the NYPD is saying all uniformed officers need to be on the job tomorrow because of the former head of Hamas calling for a global jihad, a global protest across the world. Are you focused on that? Are you worried about that kind of activity impacting America?
Yeah, I'm worried for two reasons. One is the narrative. I remember I was in the kibbutz that got overrun and massacred by Hamas. I was there a year ago when they fired 4,500 rockets in, and I met all those people in the daycare center. I was so grief-stricken to find out that they went into the daycare center and killed all the children there and beheaded babies. And this is like the worst of the worst. And so I worry about, already with just a week after, less than a week after this event, you're already having this narrative coming out that somehow Hamas is the victim and not Israel. And I think we have to keep our eye on that. Now, I also worry about this global jihad factor like the caliphate that we saw a couple of years ago.
Congressman, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders is slamming Israel and the counterstrike in Gaza. He says it's a serious violation of international law. President Biden is urging Israel to follow the rules of war, whatever that means. Take a listen to this.
The one thing that I did say, that it is really important that Israel, with all the anger, frustration, and just, I don't know how to explain it, that exists, is that they operate by the rules of war.
Operate by the rules of war, Congressman, after an unprovoked attack on Israel. Your thoughts?
What about the rules of war with Hamas? I mean, what they did by raping innocent civilians, killing elderly women and men, going into a daycare center and killing children and beheading them. I mean, those are war crimes. We should be cautioning Israel. We should be unleashing Israel on Hamas. And I'm with Netanyahu on this one. I'm glad he's in power. He unified his government. And they're going to go in and they're going to clean it out. I mean, I just don't understand this narrative, Maria, that they always turn Israel into the bully and not the victim.
Right. Clearly,
they were the victim here. And the world saw what happened. And you can't change those images and the videos that I've seen. And I would just caution everybody to not fall prey to this narrative.
It's incredibly horrific, and it's hard to look at any of that, and I've seen them as well. Congressman, do you believe that Israel can win this? I mean, you just talked about going house to house. So in other words, Israeli soldiers are going to go house to house in Gaza to try to get the hostages, to try to kill terrorists. Do you think that they have the capacity to actually destroy Hamas while you also have incoming fire from Hezbollah?
Well, it's going to be extremely difficult. I think this next phase of the operation, going house to house, we're very good at this. We did this in Iraq. We perfected it. Remember Fallujah 2004? That's why our special forces are there to help train as they go in. But, I think a lot of people don't realize this is not going to be a matter of days or even weeks. It's going to be a matter of months before they can, focus and clear house to house. At the same time, they have to worry about the threat from the northern front out of Lebanon. Remember, Hezbollah has 100,000 rockets that can overload the Iron Dome. And I think that's what we've always been concerned about this in our war game strategies. We talk about it's kind of a sort of sandwich, thing where you got 100,000 rockets from the north and you got Hezbollah from the south. And then you got Iran, who's behind this thing.
Yeah.
The idea the administration wants to sweep Iran under the rug as if they had nothing to do with this, while their fingerprints are all over this operation. They put the money in, they put the weapons in, and for God's sakes, we shouldn't be giving them $6 billion on top of all of this.
Well, I mean, there are calls to, refreeze that money right now. We haven't heard an answer from the administration on whether or not they are going to stop that $6 billion, but maybe they can't. Can the Qataris be complicit here and ensure that Iran gets that money?
Well, that's the naivete of the administration, is we're going to launder the money from South Korea to the Qataris.
Yeah.
And somehow the Qataris are going to make sure this is humanitarian aid when the president of Iran himself said, I'm going to do with the money what I want.
Exactly.
Right? I mean,
exactly.
I just can't believe how it's dumb. I mean, this is really, to people that aren't even national security experts, they see how this is so unwise. I am looking at legislative options to block that money, because on top of all this, the last thing we want to see is $6 billion going into the largest state sponsor of terror.
But, I mean, look, you want to come up with legislation, but you've got to get a speaker in place. It looks like your conference is choosing Steve Scalise, but now there are questions he'll even have the votes. Where does that stand, and what are you expecting out of the speaker's race?
Well, I made the case to my conference that this is too dangerous of a time to be playing politics. We We need a speaker in the chair to govern. I have a resolution with 415 co-sponsors, which is unprecedented, condemning Hamas and supporting Israel. And we need to get that on the floor, and we need to govern. And the world is getting too dangerous to play games. We need a speaker in the chair.
Do you think we'll get one by the end of the week?
Gotta hope so, Maria, for the sake of not only our nation, but for the sake of the world.
Congressman, we are in a dangerous place. We haven't even addressed the border, where we've gotten terrorists apprehended at the border. I wonder what that wide open border means. We had a list of Middle Easterners as well coming through in droves just in the last few months. We're going to be watching all of this. We so appreciate your time and leadership, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria.
Michael
Thanks for having me.
McCaul.